What's the most brutal rejection you've ever gotten? Many years ago, after getting divorced at 30, I hit the online dating scene. I had essentially never dated as an adult, having met my ex-wife in college. I was not prepared for how brutal online dating was. This was in the Matchy Harmony days, not the apps. First online date, we meet up at a restaurant. She walks in, sees me, and says, "Oh, you are much uglier in person," and walks out. Doesn't even sit down. Everything turned out fine, been happily married for 10 years again. But I thought that was pretty unnecessarily brutal and strange. Dodged a bullet there. I had a couple of good friends that I knew and hung out with almost daily since I was 6 years old just started to ghost me when we were in high school. Despite me asking them what was wrong, they never answered. If we hung out in our small friend group, they would ignore me. One day, they asked me to come over. They had me sit down in my friend's living room, and they flat out told me that they didn't want to be friends anymore. But they also didn't want to be enemies. No explanation, they just didn't want me to exist to them anymore. I, to this day, have no idea why. The fucked up thing was they tried to drag my other friends away from me too. If my other friends were hanging out at my house, they would call my house, ask to speak to my friend, and try to get them to leave to come hang out with them. Luckily, my other friends were much more mature and called that bullshit out, and they are still my best friends to this day. I had a really close friend who I had known for about 10 years, since childhood. We spoke every day over text, giving each other constant life updates and discussing all kinds of topics. We also spent time together in person at least once a week. Then one day he just ghosted me with no explanation. He left my messages on read and then eventually blocked me. Didn't take any calls. I ran into him in public and greeted him, and he hid from me in a bathroom. When he got out, he told me that he was kinda busy and couldn't talk. Then power walked to his car with a really stressed out look on his face while I begged him for any kind of communication, and just drove away. That was the last time I ever saw or heard from him. I still don't know why he did it. He genuinely fucked up my ability to trust people even 6 years after it happened. It's hard because I have a lot of fond memories of hanging out with him and sharing a lot of really personal stuff, but the memories are tainted by the way our friendship ended. Now I think that everyone is going to ghost me. A couple of times I've tried to contact him through meme pages he runs on Facebook, but he never acknowledges me at all. When I asked my GF to marry me, but after being rejected, I found out she had been fucking another guy for 3 months, and he proposed to her 1 week before I did. After she told me no, she moved in with him a couple days later. When my mom took me back to the adoption agency, I fell in love with the idea of you, my ex-long-distance boyfriend, after a little over 2 years of an off and on relationship, right before breaking up with me. I asked someone for a smoke once and he pointed to my stomach and said, "Nah, you shouldn't if you're pregnant." Yeah, I was not pregnant, just a sloppy, fat 20-year-old, who is no longer fat or a smoker, thankfully. I applied for a job, the interview went really, and I was told to ring in 2 days for the results. I rang and gave my name and explained why I was calling. His reaction was, and I quote, "Hahaha, it ain't you," then he hung up. Oh man, so before I was bartending, I also worked in alcohol retail supervising a liquor department. There was this cute redhead who would come in a couple days a week after she got off work, and would literally spend 30 minutes or more talking to me every time. Tons of questions about life in general, shared a bunch of her personal problems, etc. If I was on lunch, I'd always eat my lunch on the bench outside in the shade, and she would even come sit by me there, literally asking people inside where I was, and talked up a storm. After a few months, I figured, what the hell, ask her out. She literally laughed and said, "Oh, more laughing again, Nuwo, not you? No, no way." The kicker? She kept coming in for about another year trying to chat me up. I was literally the most confused I'd ever been in my life. Dated a girl for 1 month. She started saying and showing she really was into me. 2 days later, when she went to a festival, she fell in love with a new guy and just said, "Sorry, I met someone else on the festival. It was nice with you. Wish you all the best." Got told they were forcing themselves to be with me because they knew I'd give them a good life. Then proceeded to tell me that they were attracted to me anymore, and sex with me started to feel like it was wrong. Dude I was friends with in my teens reached out to me when we were both adults. Flirted, told me he could see something real with me. Invited me out to his place for a weekend. Felt me up, kissed me, told me how much he loved my boobs and spending time with me. Halfway through I asked what this meant for us relationship-wise, and he said, "Sorry, but you just need to get hotter. I want a trophy wife and you were too fat." Broke my heart, since years prior I was bulimic and nearly killed myself. He knew. Well, now I'm no longer fat, and he's happy with some girl. Going out with my school girlfriend for 4 years, she left 1 year. came back, and we got back together. Things were doing great, and then I asked her what she thought about us being more than just boyfriend-girlfriend. We were 22 at the time. She laughed, looked at me straight in the eyes, and pierced my heart with a dagger, saying, "You thought I would marry you?" While continuing laughing. I couldn't live near the thought of her anymore, moved to Paris, and then moved to 2,000 miles away across the Atlantic. Not so much a rejection per se. I didn't have a girlfriend until I was in college. Don't know if that makes this more painful or not. We only dated for about 4-ish months. 2 months or so in was the amber period, everything seemingly bathed in golden light. There was an ecstasy to everything I think I'd never experienced before, and I'm sure I've never experienced since. Maybe the joy receptors of the brain simply can't return to stasis after very specific types of stimuli. We were both working during school, but it was summer, and so we spent all our free time together every last minute except during working hours. One morning I drove her to her job and dropped her off in the parking lot where one of her coworker friends was walking in to start the same shift. Just then I realized my girlfriend accidentally left her house keys in my car, so I circle back and park and run towards the employee entrance where she was headed. I'm turning the corner when I hear her coworker ask, "Sue, who was that guy that just dropped you off?" in a sort of girl gossipy tone. I froze in my tracks out of sheer curiosity. I was the proverbial fly on the wall. "Oh, him? He's nobody, just some guy I was hanging out with." "Ooh off." She smiled so pleasantly at me, paused for a second, and when the smile faded she let out the sternest and most blankly faced no. An ex broke up with me on Valentine's Day. I had bought her 3 bouquets of flowers and planned to cook dinner for us. Lol, this same ex had once asked me never to break up with her on a holiday or her birthday, and also insisted that a breakup should be done in person if possible, but over the phone at the least. Yet, she attempted to break up with me via text. Back in the days of MSN Messenger, I got blindly set up with this girl by a friend. We hit it off, exchanged selfies, all of that jazz. Being in middle school, it was obviously nothing serious or explicit, just dumb little flirty stuff. We decided to meet in person at a dance that we'd both be attending with our respective friend groups. I didn't see her for most of the night. When I finally did and a slow song came on, I went over and asked her to dance with me. She winced and shook her head. I just said okay and walked away defeated. Later, online, I asked her why she'd turned me down. Her response was, "Oh, that was you? I don't like ugly and fat people." Wrote poetry to a girl in the grade above me. When I finally admitted it was me who was writing them, all she said was "oh." I was so crushed I stopped. 2 decades later I found out from someone that the "oh" wasn't disinterest. It was that she knew it was me and didn't realize I thought I'd kept her in the dark. She'd actually loved getting my little letters in her locker, and would read them to the other girls who'd all be jealous. If I'd known, she knew I would've never stopped. Told I was too ugly to live and I should do the world a favor and kill myself. Texted me a week later to ask if I gave it more thought and suggested how I do it. It was great when a few years later I hit my first director position and she was one of my direct reports. The look on her face was almost enough to let her live it down. Said she was ready, then called me a month later saying that she slept with someone she met and that she understood that she really wanted to be with me. Hee hee.